Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is another exciting episode of Tech Tuesdays, a joint effort with South Florida Tech Hub and the Owwll App. This is a historic day. Not only do we have a new administration at the presidential level, but this is our 25th episode. Count them, 25. So congratulations to all of us for being 25 years old, so to speak.
We're making history.
It's historic.
Yes.
So what is Tech Tuesdays? It is a joint effort of South Florida Tech Hub and the Owwll App. If you're not on the Owwll App, you can go ahead and download it while you watch live. If you use the referral code of thank you, one word, you'll get $10 to start. If you already have the Owwll App, thank you for that. Thanks for watching, either live or the replay. So, little personal note: I'm a history buff, and given this is a historic day, in that it's our 25th episode, I thought I'd look up what else happened in history today. So, after extensive research, on this date, January 21st, in 1986, the first inductees in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame were inducted. 1986.
Do we know who they were?
I do know who they were. So let's go down the list real quick. Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, James Brown, Little Richard, Fats Domino, Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, the Everly Brothers, two of them, Buddy Holly, Jerry Lee Lewis. I think everyone on this list is now dead, but they're in the Hall of Fame.
We don't know about Elvis though. He might.
Elvis still might be alive. So enough for history, but we have more history. For those of you that have previously watched Tech Tuesdays, you may notice the table is new. This is a brand new table. It's a piece of art from Lawrence Gartell. He was a previous expert of the day when we had RoboHood on. And I am going to try and get RoboHood. And as a matter of fact, Lawrence met Crystal Joint from RoboHood on this show, another historic first. And from that meeting, they developed a partnership. And this table was already in process before that, but it's from Lawrence Gartell. Hey, Lawrence. Hey, Crystal, if you're watching the replay. I'm going to... What?
Nice job.
It's beautiful. I don't know what it looks like from your side, but from our side, it really is beautiful. So I hope to have both Lawrence and Crystal back on Tech Tuesdays. Real quick, my office hours on the Owwll App, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern. I do go live periodically as well. We'll talk to Dr. Chris about his office hours as well as we go along. But I think that's enough for me now. So Denis, why don't you introduce yourself and then introduce Dr. Ochner as our expert of the day.
Yeah, we have an exciting show this morning. Good morning. This is Denis Sinelnikov from Media Components. I run a full-service digital marketing agency. Exciting news. We just came back from Orlando over the weekend. We were all involved with the Owwll community, with $1 Million Media, with everybody part of the Owwll shows, weekly shows. We had a great time networking with a lot of podcasters, meeting influencers, speakers, authors. It was my first podcast, but definitely not the last. Jeffrey, you were there with us in spirit.
I did watch some of the podcasts. They were great.
Awesome. So yeah, we just came back. It was a great opportunity. If everybody's interested in Podfest, check it out. It's podfestexpo.com. But this morning we have Dr. Chris Ochner here from Modern Trials as expert of today. We're interested in learning more about the company. Dr. Chris, can you give us a little bit of a self-introduction and how long you've been with this company? How did you get involved with Tech Hub? And how are you changing the healthcare landscape?
You bet. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Chris Ochner. So I'm co-founder and CEO of Modern Trials. I've been working on that one for going on 5 years now. Oh, no. Going on 6. Yeah, that's my baby's getting old. Got involved with Tech Hub Two, 3 years
At
ago,
least.
doing change, predating this guy now. That's
Yep.
a staple of Tech Hub, and
The
honestly,
foundation, the rock of Tech Hub. Hey, Nikki, my boss, if you're
Were
watching.
you involved with the Techpalooza last year?
I have not done Techpalooza because all our development is offshore.
Okay.
And so we are yet to be able to afford the developers that we want here. But no, in truth, we just got really fortunate with an amazing development team over in Mumbai. Shout out to Rizwan and the crew. If you're listening, you guys are tops. So modern trials, what do? We democratize access to clinical trials. It was something, I kind of wandered into it almost by accident. My mom got real sick. She got a terminal diagnosis and was getting treatment at, a community hospital, maybe 200-300 beds, kind of 85% of the healthcare in America is this type of thing where, it's 5 miles from the house, great care. I was born there, so on and so forth. Got a terminal diagnosis, unfortunately. And being a community hospital, they weren't running clinical trials. They couldn't provide access to clinical trials. That was her only hope. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to transfer her care to Columbia Medical Center and get her enrolled in a clinical trial. But most people don't have that luxury, right? And so we started this almost as a sort of charity project, if you will, to really democratize that access and bring access to these advanced treatment options, right? Because if you want some new therapeutic, it's really your only option is through a clinical trial, right? Otherwise, it's just what's on there, what's out there. So we put this together with that intent of bringing this to patients in need, and without even realizing the size of the market and the size of the need, right? I mean, we've got tens of millions of people actively searching for clinical trials, and there's over $1 trillion in this market. So became more serious of a business and graduated kind of from its pure charity roots. So the idea is still to support patients 100%, right? That is our goal. But we go through and now we're really providing services to the people that are running clinical trials, right? Mostly contract research organizations. Those are our primary customers, to really marry those two worlds and bring those opportunities that are out there kind of in plenty to the patients that are out there also in plenty that are searching for it. And, when we first discovered this, I was like, wait. You mean there's all these, clinical trials and they're spending tens of billions of dollars every year to find these patients, and all these patients trying to find these clinical trials, and they're just missing each other. It's like having all the food in the world and starving people and not being able to get it together, which is still arguably the case. So we're trying to bridge that gap.
So if somebody's looking for a central database, they're not, somebody got diagnosed with terminal, whether it's cancer or some kind of illness, they don't know that they might have option B or option 2. So you would be a great resource as they get in touch with you and they can search. Or how does the process work if somebody's looking for medicine or treatment options that does not exist in typical hospital?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're still in the phase where we are partnering with healthcare organizations, right? And we're aggregating that health record data, right, in a HIPAA compliant manner. Obviously, we maintain patient privacy, but what we want to do is really bring the opportunities directly to the patients when it's appropriate for them, right? So this isn't, hey, do you have this thing or are you interested in a clinical trial? This is, we've gone through and pre-screened people. So the process goes, we partner with healthcare organizations, aggregate all that data, and then somebody looking for particular patients, right, to fill their trials can say, okay, I've got 30, 40, sometimes 50, 60, 70 criteria, right? Eligibility criteria for my trial. And they're very stringent because this is all FDA has agreed. It needs to be exactly this, right? And they can say, okay, let's pre-screen using electronic health record data to find individuals that, at least as far as we can tell from their health records, meet criteria. So this way we're not giving false hope to anybody that we should have known wouldn't qualify, right? And 2, we're not sort of wasting time, resources, bothering anybody if it's not appropriate, right? So the process really goes that our customers can kind of they can look through, I don't want to say window shop, it's crude when you're talking about patients, but the truth is they can run a search and then they're going to get de-identified, of course, but they're going to get summaries of all the patients that meet criteria and let's say live within 20 miles of one of their study sites, right? And they can go through and do a deep dive. They can see their whole medical history. They just can't see who they are.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they come through us. So we're middlemen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we bridge that connection. Not only do we make that introduction, but we will go out and then talk to those patients and say, hey, Mrs. Jones, right? We're always calling on behalf of the healthcare organization that provides their primary care. And that's one of the benefits that we provide to the healthcare organizations, right? Because we're, showing the patients, we're showing their customers, right? Put another way, they're showing their patients that they care and they can deliver more and more cutting edge services than can the next hospital company, right?
Mhm.
So, hi, Mrs. Jones, I'm calling on behalf of St. Luke's Hospital in Missouri, whatever it is. We understand you're recently diagnosed with X. We're really sorry to hear that. But we may have an opportunity for you to access additional treatment options. Would you like to hear about it? Right? And patients love it. It's no surprise, right? I mean, we have just example after example of patients crying, and I had given up hope, and this fosters hope. And if you look, the crazy thing is, right, with all of the medicine and everything we have out there, and that's our primary goal, is right to connect them to treatments.
Mhm.
Still, the belief that you're going to get better, the belief you can get better, is still the number one predictor of who actually does recover and doesn't. So, it's sort of like a dual benefit. We're riding that wave.
Are there any analytics or results driven data that you have of certain patients or clients getting cures with the treatments?
So in terms of people that have recovered
Mhm.
through clinical trials, I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of case studies.
Mhm.
So think about it. I should preface this by saying, again, us being in the data aggregation stage,
Mhm.
we're talking 2026 before we are offering this service and actually connecting patients. Other than we've done pilot testing, we've done all that, we have put people into clinical trials, but we're not fully running with that service offering yet. We'll talk a little bit about the trial recruitment toolbox that's
Yeah.
coming out in a little while.
Right.
And that I think is super cool. And that we've integrated AI with. So
Mhm.
that's, if anybody is into AI in healthcare, it's been an interesting learning experience for us. But no, in terms, I mean, clinical trials, again, if you have a terminal diagnosis of whatever, right? Clinical trial is the only thing really, and there's nothing out there that is going to cure it. Clinical trial is really your only hope, right? And we probably all know people that fit in that category. We've all lost somebody too early,
Mhm.
right? And so it is really, aside from a few what they call compassionate use cases, getting into a clinical trial is the only hope. It's the only way for these people to access the most cutting edge treatments, right? Like by definition, these are all new treatments, right? Because they're pre-FDA approval. Once they're approved, they're out on the market, and they probably charge too much, and whatever it is,
Mhm.
that you've got your pick of the litter, whatever the healthcare organization is going to provide you. That's it. If you want something new, potentially better, do they all work? Of course not. Of course not. These are experimental stuff. But again, if you've got a terminal diagnosis, why not? In my opinion,
Yeah,
why
of
not?
course. Of
Right.
course.
So, two-part question, if you don't mind me prying, because I think it's an unfortunate, but it's an interesting story. And if I have it wrong, correct me. Back to your mother for a minute. I think the part of the story is you were looking for a clinical trial, but by the time, because it was such a manual process, by the time you found one, your mother had passed, correct?
Very close. So
Okay.
I'll take you down, fill it in. This is interesting, I think, because it's part of the reasons, part of the draw for the healthcare organizations, right, to share their data. It's one of the biggest questions we get, right? I mean, the reality of aggregating patient data, right, doing it in a HIPAA compliant manner, relatively speaking, that's easy. Getting healthcare organizations to share that data, even if they know it is best for their patients, it's still an uphill climb. What I describe for them, and remember, healthcare is a business, and this is with that understanding, is that what we do, partnering with Modern Trials, really helps them retain, put crudely in business terms, it helps them retain their highest paying customers. What do I mean by that? Well, most of healthcare expenditures, approximately 80%, are bunched up in the final years of life, right? Because why? You don't get a cold, you need a hip replacement or something like that, right? You need more and more expensive services
Right.
later on in life, right? Those are also the people that are most likely to be looking for clinical trials. These are the people most likely to have a terminal diagnosis and need to go out where, status quo treatments just isn't getting it done for them, right? And so I use my mother as an example because she, although the little community hospital, great care, she went there for 50 years, great care. They
Wow.
just couldn't provide access to a clinical trial. She had brain cancer, right? Stage 4 glioma. And so when we transferred her care to Columbia Medical Center, they ultimately did get her into a clinical trial. But in the
Okay.
meantime, she did have a second craniotomy. And we got the EOB, the explanation of benefits back from insurance. They tell you how much you paid, right? How much the insurance paid on their behalf. It was a total of $1 million.
Oh my God.
Right? And that went to Columbia. So when you think about it, right, the community hospital, which is bread and butter healthcare in America, they lost $1 million customer for their inability to be able to provide access to clinical trials. So that's how we, quote unquote, sell it, if you will, to our healthcare partners. They say, what's in it for us? And we profit share with them. And fortunately, most of them don't find that to be the most valuable or most attractive component of partnering with us. But nonetheless, again, it's a business. So
Got it.
they like the aspect that they can provide, better, newer, more advanced care to their customers, to their patients than can most of their competitors. Right.
Got it.
So
Second part, when I first met Chris and watched your presentation, this was in 2023 or 2024, you described, and I was shocked at prior to modern trials, how manual the process is. You would think in this day and age, it's an automated process of matching potential candidates with a clinical trial. And as I understand it, prior to modern trials, it was pretty much an all manual process. Fair statement?
it's still an
Still?
all manual process. Not all manual, but I'll throw some stats at you. Over 80% of clinical trial sites, so these are the people bringing people in for clinical trials, are still using paper and pencil. Literally all their records, paper and pencil. If you have to sign an informed consent form or HIPAA authorization form, you have to come in and grab a pen and actually physically sign those things. We thought that was a little bit ridiculous, but it's kind of two comments with that. One, I sort of understand, right? So you have CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, a while back mandated that everybody must move over to electronic medical records, right? Prior to that, everybody was the same thing, paper and pen.
Personal note, if you don't know what CMS is, if you're on Medicare, which I am, you know it very well. So CMS is, what's the acronym stand for?
Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Every bill through Medicare flows through CMS. So if you're on Medicare, you'll get to know CMS well.
Yep. And they wield a lot of power, right? If you're a healthcare organization, you need to be reimbursed for your services. That's how you keep the lights on and keep helping patients. So when CMS says you need to do something,
You listen.
Or you give up 30 to 40% of your revenue, which
Right.
is never going to happen. So
Right.
when they say we need to move to electronic medical records, it actually happens. All right. Short of that, it doesn't, plain and simple. So equate that to the clinical trial side where there is no CMS saying you have to move everything to electronic medical records. So people haven't. I say we've had a system in place for 50 years. And yeah, maybe it's a little slow. Maybe it's not the most efficient thing, but I know it and it works.
It works.
Yeah,
it works.
Exactly. So with that, that's what's going on out there. And when we originally set up our system, right, where we were going to be approaching patients and talking through and signing the consent and going through inclusion, exclusion criteria, I mean, it's a ton of steps and it's very highly regulated. I said, we need to do this electronically. We need to move a little bit in advance. But what happened is that for our people that were actually doing this, I was sending them additional computer monitors because everything being HIPAA compliant, right? You've got security is of utmost paramount importance, obviously. So we had special accounts through each one of the services that we need to provide. So we needed to be able to send them documents. Okay, we had a special DocuSign account, and then we had a special Dropbox account to store that in a HIPAA compliant manner, and a special email account, and a special this and that and that. And so they were bouncing back and forth between 8 different tabs, right? While they're talking to candidates, trying to go through that and get everything done. So what we're going to release, what we realized we need was some sort of basically a CMS, right? A client management system that put all of that together under one house and flowed. And it was designed for that purpose. So everything's integrated, everything works seamlessly. So for anybody recruiting for clinical trials, including us, the trial recruitment toolbox will be coming out Q2, and it's going to dramatically change the game.
So Chris and I talked a little earlier. So why don't you talk about that future release, so to speak, future functionality that's going to be available to 2Q 2025?
Yep.
Roughly.
You mentioned you're going to have some AI tools that will
So
speed up the process.
This would have been released, but we took an additional what turned out to be 5-6 months. We thought AI integration was going to take about a month. So 5x that. And here we are. We've got it to behave, which is kind of amazing. So what it is we have set up a system whereby we take all of those components. So when you think about it, if you're going to recruit somebody for a clinical trial, you need a way to contact them, right? So you need a voice system and SMS system, all right? And again, keep in mind that everything's got to be HIPAA compliant, super secure. So these are either very special accounts that you set up with third-party vendors, right? And you can do that, you can get it done, but again, it's that patchwork, right? Where you've got to bounce from back and back and back and back and back. But also you are bouncing PHI, protected health information, so people's identifiers back through all these vendors. It's not optimal, okay? Anytime you're moving data, that's when you make it vulnerable, right? So we have a way to contact people, all right? And then you need a way to input your candidates, all right? So let's say, we've got Susan Smith and Tom Jones and Mike Johnson. These are all candidates that, we think, or for whatever reason, if I'm recruiting patients for clinical trials, right, I have a list of candidates, and maybe it's from my docs have referred, whatever it is. All right. So you need a way to organize those. You need a recruitment script, right? So if I have my team that's going to be reaching out to those people, they should, well, there's an IRB, all of this has to be IRB approved. That's an institutional review board. They've got to approve. If you did a psychology experiment in college, you had to get it IRB approved, same stuff, just a little higher stakes when you're going with clinical trials. Still needs to be IR approved. They require that you have a script, right? So a lot of people will type that out. It's going to be 2 pages long. Whoops. Ooh. Is this our first caller?
Nope.
And
Sorry.
You're using the AI for scripting? Is that what
We will. Actually, I completely, I'll get to that. We have that script laid out, but we decided to go further, and we built in full decision tree logic, because if you're having a dynamic conversation with somebody, there's tons of permutations, right? You can't look at 2 pages of typed out text and say, okay, this is going to cover everything that's going to go on in that conversation. And this was a mess when you have a whole team that you're trying to get to follow the same thing and keep it consistent, say the same things. Tom saying something, Mike saying something else, John saying a third thing, right? There was no quality control. There was a lot of liability. So we're like, okay, let's put it into a recruitment script that does everything for you, right? And just build in, okay, here's what you say at this point. Here's what you say at this point. Here's what you say at this point. Then we wanted email reminders. Then we had to get a way to get legal documentation out to people, consent forms, HIPAA authorization forms, get those back, provide copies to them, FDA regulations, storage, retrieval, so on and so forth. All right. So there's 9 different things that go into this. Originally, we needed it for us because I realized it's going to be a liability nightmare. There's going to be, and I've led these groups, and there are tons of mistakes all over the place. Didn't want to do that. Don't want to go to jail. Don't want to violate any patient rights, but mostly don't want to go to jail. So we put this together, and I said, look, I don't want to spend a year building this. I said, let's find it. Couldn't. There's nothing out there on the market. I said, okay, let's see if we can sew together, find different functionalities and APIs and see if we can sort of cobble it together. Didn't work. Things either, do this, but not that, or they weren't HIPAA compliant or what. So we said, fine, let's build it all. So the beauty of it is that every single component is built specifically for this purpose, right? And so it takes the user through beginning to end. So every clinical trial has necessarily got a clinical trial protocol that the FDA, you've talked with the FDA and you said, here's our protocol, here's what we're going to do to patients. If we do this and we get this data and it shows that it works better than placebo or whatever's out there, whatever, and is reasonably safe, will you guys approve it? The FDA says yes. So that protocol becomes the Bible for the trial. Every trial's got one necessarily, right? So what you do, the user will upload that into the system, closed system. Nobody touches their data at all in any way. It's just them. It's like Microsoft Excel for accountants, basically. Right? So they upload their data in the clinical trial protocol. And then we had put the system together such that we use templates. We have sort of prefabbed templates that they can just fill in a relatively small amount of information with the stuff that's going to be different from trial to trial to trial. Right? And then everything else stays the same, right? When I call somebody, I want to explain who I am, why I'm calling. I may have an opportunity for you to access additional treatment options. Would you like to hear about it? That stuff's all the same. That's not trial specific. The trial specific stuff the user would have to fill in, right? So they'd have to fill in all the trial specific stuff in the recruitment script, in the consent form, HIPAA authorization form, right? We put all that together. So it cut down what typically takes several weeks and cut it down to maybe 10 hours worth of work. Then we realized, and this is just to set up to be able to start recruiting for a trial, right? It's usually several weeks worth of stuff. They charge $20,000, $30,000 from sponsors to do this. And frankly, it's really annoying work. Anybody that's put together an IRB proposal, no, it's just insanely annoying to put together the recruitment script and the consent form. And it needs to be precise as part of the thing. So it's like high concentration work that nobody loves doing. We realized, wow, a large language model, since you have a trial protocol and all of that information is necessarily there, right? It's really just a matter of pulling that out and doling it out appropriately, doling it out in the recruitment script and doling it out in the consent form. Large language models should be able to handle that. And as it turns out, luckily we were right, but we weren't sure for 3 or 4 months when it was difficult getting it to behave. Because an AI engine is, even when we are using the most, for what we're doing, OpenAI is still the most advanced model, probably will be for some time. And that's what we're using. But even with, a really advanced model, it's sort of like having a really brilliant teenage child that is smarter than anything else on earth, but doesn't always want to behave, right? So you have to wrestle with it a little bit, and you wind up, we had to develop a whole management system just to manage the variability in the responses that we get back. Because it's interesting. So our development team, right, they're just used to coding. When you code something traditionally, as long as you give it the same inputs, you're going to get the same output every single time. Not so with AI, right? You give it the same input, it's going to tell you this, and then next time it's going to tell you that, and next time it's going to tell you that, and you have to manage that. You have to make sure that you're not giving the user 10 different things. You're giving the user what they should say.
So I want to shift gears a little. Chris, you've been an amazing guest so far, and I knew you would be. So I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people that want to follow up with you. I guess LinkedIn is fine. Why don't you go ahead and spell out, not that it's that difficult, but spell out the URL of your website. And also, assuming you're going to be available on Owwll, have you thought about going live periodically or office hours, or what's your preference? So what's the best way and other ways that people can follow up with you?
You bet. Sure. So if you want more information on modern trials, that is modern trials. Modern is in up to date. Trials is in clinical trials, not trails. That auto corrected one time in a very sensitive email, so I spelled the name of my own company incorrectly. Moderntrials.com, one word. Feel free to reach, and there's information about the trial recruitment toolbox and everything we do on there. LinkedIn, you can get me at Chris Ochner. And on the Owwll app, yes, I am on and don't have office hours at this time because being an entrepreneur, my schedule is never the same, literally, but can look for me live. Going live sometimes late afternoon Eastern time. That you may be able to catch me. I will pop in and do a couple hours here, a couple hours there from driving on the road. So please feel free to reach out.
The other thing is we have a lot of founders, solo entrepreneurs. I'm assuming if someone has a question or wants to be mentored, assuming you have the time, you're open for that as well, correct?
Absolutely.
So before I call out to our first Owwll user, kind of a different question. So you'd consider yourself a startup, correct? Still?
Absolutely.
So are you looking for any kind, because we have some VCs out there, are you looking for any kind of investment currently? And if so, what type?
So thanks for asking. Currently, we are open to strategic partner investments only at this time. Eventually, we will probably move to more traditional institutional funding. But at this point, we're really looking for strategic partners. And specifically, what does that mean is an organization that can reduce our time to data. All right. In addition to providing money, our primary need, I guess, is assistance in forming those relationships with healthcare organizations, as that is it's just a tough area. And so we're doing great and have a number of connections, but can always use more and better.
Are you looking to partner up with insurance companies as well? Do they have the right data that you need?
It's a really, really, really good question. At this time, no, it is much more difficult to go through the process because insurance companies don't have an avenue through which we can directly reach out to those patients. And that's a big part of our process. So when we partner with healthcare organizations, we become a business associate, or we put into place a business associate agreement, or BAA, and that enables us, because we are providing clinical services or potential clinical services to patients, we can then access the health records, obviously keeping them completely confidential, but we become an extender of that healthcare organization.
Got it.
And we can contact patients and bring those opportunities to them.
So you mentioned majority of your developers are offshore, so you don't really do the actual collecting the specimens, right? It's a different company. You just the middleman connecting the trials to the end user.
Absolutely,
the
absolutely.
patient.
Yeah. So actually, the end user in our case, or our customers, are the people running the trials. So you're right. We would be sending those people, once qualified, to the places or to the organizations that are going to collect the specimens or provide the therapeutic or whatever it is. Yeah, we don't get involved in that. Eventually, if we look ahead, phase 2 for us will be to create modern trial sites itself, in which case and at which time we will be collecting the specimens and bringing the people through those trials. But that's looking 2027.
Are there any type of trials which are not dedicated to terminal illnesses? Any other categories that are popular right now? What's the next level from the illness?
Of course. So oncology trials are still the most common. There are a ton of cardiovascular trials, but they don't have to be terminal diseases. I mean, there's a lot of acne trials out there because there's a lot of people that suffer from it. So any disease that we don't have a kind of satisfactory treatment or cure for, right, which is a lot. If you look at the stats, 50% of the world, and actually 60% of Americans, suffer from chronic disease, right? It's some sort of disease by definition we can't cure. So there's tons of trials for these people. Our only, and we support those, but our only stipulation is that it's got to have some benefit for patients for us to provide any services for it. Right. So there are a bunch of trials where they're doing really early experimental stuff and they just want healthy people.
Rebecca, excuse me, Chris.
Please.
Rebecca, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Rebecca. You are live on Tech Tuesday podcast. We are broadcasting your voice to the free world, as far as I can tell. Are you okay with that?
Of course I'm okay with that.
Well,
and I love Tech Tuesdays, even though I don't understand one lick of what you're talking about.
Well, we got 10 minutes to explain. So thank you. And I wanted to reach out to you. We've not talked. So one of the advantages and one of the nice things about Owwll is it's a great networking app. So we have not met, and wanted to reach out to you because I was intrigued by what you do. So why don't you introduce yourself and explain what you do.
Well, I'm going to have to correct you, Mr. Ullman, because we have met, but
Uh-oh.
you just don't remember. I guess I'm forgettable, but that's okay.
No, it's just that I'm old. I'm old and I forget.
No, I'm old too. But
I announced earlier that I'm on Medicare, so you can figure out how old I am.
me too. I'm just going to announce it. 69,
Okay.
but
Oh my goodness.
don't exactly. So I'm older than you.
Okay.
You're a whippersnapper.
There you go.
That's the new
Yeah.
35.
There you go.
Well, I like to
Well,
say-
I'm going to say something probably politically incorrect, but that never stopped me before. You certainly don't look 69 from your picture.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I also an exercise instructor, but
Good for you.
I get that a lot, and thank you. I appreciate it. And there used to be a time where I wouldn't announce my age, but now I'm just shouting it from the rooftop. 69, 69.
So who are
Yeah.
you?
What rooftop?
Any rooftop I can climb on to. Thanks for asking, a voice in the background. Well, what I do is I share with people, and I've been doing this for 45 years, how to experience more happiness. And when I say happiness, I'm not talking about, well, something happens and now I'm happy. It's really how to maintain and sustain a foundation, personal energy, a foundation rooted in contentment. And so some people don't even like that word happy. I'd rather use the word joy. But yeah, it is how to experience more of that contentment. And is it possible? The good news is, and I am the global expert, leading expert on this topic. The good news is it's a practice skill like anything else, from being a speaker to an athlete to a musician. It's a dancer. It's just a practice. And so I share with people what to practice. And in fact, now that you got me started, I've been teaching the Truth About Happiness classes. Now I'm in California, in Oregon, and now I'm in Las Vegas. And I teach at UNLV, but to a don't tell anyone either, to the senior groups. I have students 60s, 70s, 80s, 90 years old, still searching for, still looking for this thing called happiness. And in fact, and see, now you got me started. And in fact, if you Google, there's a very famous study. It's called the 5 Most Common Regrets Dying. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I have not.
It was done by a hospice nurse. Her name is
Okay.
Ronnie Ware. And so she asked her patients, they had days to live, months to live, what are your 5 biggest regrets? And that was a pretty powerful question. And so they listed 5. And the 5th one was, I wish I would have been happier.
So if someone wanted to find out more about your classes, go ahead, and if you have a website, or you might want to spell your name as well, of how people can
Sure.
reach out to you.
Sure. Then let me just say this now that you got me started. So my latest book was published a few months ago last year. It's called Programmed for Unhappiness, Exposing the
Okay.
Untold Truth. Programmed for Unhappiness. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
And so that's my latest. And so people can find me. The name is Rebecca, Rebecca. Last name Norrington, Norrington. And you can just Google me and you'll find me. I do a weekly podcast every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube. And now I'm doing not now, but I also do a live show with my son, which is called What Happens When a Mother and Son Make Sense Out of Nonsense, plus more, every Saturday at 9:15. So thank you for the advertisement.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.
So the voice in the back that you heard was not the Almighty, although he might be in hiding. It's Dr. Chris Ochner. I don't know if you had a chance or were watching the webcast, but he's the CEO of a company that's automated clinical trials. Any thoughts or questions for him, or while we're on that topic? And I called you because I thought your expertise was related to wellness and medical care. I think they're obviously very directly connected.
Yes. And so let's see, clinical tests. So you do what specifically? What are you what are your, what is the clinic about?
Yeah, great question. So we don't actually do the trials. What we discovered was that there's a big issue from a business standpoint, if you will. Companies that are developing new therapeutics, they need patients. In fact, they need representative samples, not just white women, which it's traditionally been, to prove that these new therapeutics are safe and effective. So we help them from a business standpoint. And then on the other side, patients. Only 8% of patients out there have ever been offered the opportunity to access an advanced treatment option, right? An experimental therapeutic. We want to increase that. So we're middlemen. That's what we do. We bring the potential treatments to the people that need them.
Okay, and when you say potential treatments, give me an example of, top 3 or the most popular.
Sure. Well, so we don't bring those therapeutics ourselves. Our customers have the ones with the therapeutics. So they're medical device company, they are pharmaceutical companies. So the most popular ones are therapeutics for oncology, for cancer, and cardiovascular disease is second. And then, be honest with you, I can't remember what third is, but that's what you most commonly see.
So Rebecca, you just prompted, maybe we weren't clear earlier. Now that I think about it, who are actually your customers? Who are you actually selling to? Not directly to patients.
Nope.
So who are your customers?
Yeah. So
Well, I don't know how spiritual you want to get, but people that need my services find me. I'm not really a good marketer. I said I've been doing this for 45 years, so it's just again teaching the classes. People that sign up. I mean, I have up to 50 people this is my 6th semester teaching. So people find, and you get to a certain point. Well, not everybody does, but when the accomplishments, the achievements, the goals are met, but where is the contentment in all of that? In fact, Will Smith, before the infamous slap heard around the world, he was interviewed in GQ magazine in November 2021, and he said, "I have everything. I have money, connections, global identity." He says, "But I'm not happy." So I'm really not, like I said, people find me just like this.
Right. So
Synchronicity, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Your question prompted a question for me, and I was actually asking Chris, because it may not have been clear based on your question, who Chris's customers with Modern Trials is. So sorry if I wasn't clear. I was really asking Chris.
That's all right.
No
Go ahead.
problem. No problem. I have a question.
Okay.
For Chris and
Sure.
you too.
Shoot.
Do you worry?
Was that the end?
It's either yes or no. Do you worry?
Everybody worries. Yes, of course.
See, so you said everybody worries. So with all due respect, that's a programmed response because you didn't pop out of the womb knowing how to worry. And in the book, I list 56 programmed behaviors that subtract from happiness or subtract from contentment. And worry is a program. We were all taught. So whatever you learned, you can unlearn. And the good news is when you practice trusting whatever you want to trust in, whatever you practice trusting, you can't worry. You can't worry and trust at the same time. So choose one.
Rebecca,
But everybody doesn't worry. That's not a true statement. But with all due respect.
Rebecca, don't mean to cut you off. We've got about 15 seconds. Any parting thoughts? Thank you for taking the time today.
Again, happiness, contentment is a practice skill.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, her question prompted me. Maybe we weren't clear.
Yeah.
Who are your actual
Yep.
customers with Modern Trials?
Sure. So anybody running clinical trials themselves, those would be our customers, right? Specifically, contract research organizations or CROs. Those are the people, if you're Pfizer or Merck or Glaxo, you're hiring them, these guys, to execute and to complete the clinical trials. And it makes sense, right? I mean, the FDA is going to approve your drug. It's usually a little better optics if somebody else
Right.
has done them versus you yourself. It is a $1.5 trillion industry. I didn't know that. It's large.
Wow.
So that's the other thing. There's, and I guess it's a good thing or bad thing. There's a lot of money available for modern trials, for clinical trials that aren't being leveraged because it's such a manual process where modern trials can assist. So there are trials out there, and would it be fair to say there are more trials than patients applying for trials? There's a tremendous need for candidates for clinical trials, correct?
That's exactly the issue, right? And not just a need for people, need for very specific individuals. And how do you find those specific individuals? I signed on to see sort of where the competition. We're not the only ones working to crack this nut. And I signed on for one of our competitors, I won't name, but just to see what the state of the art was out there. And so then I got an email asking me if I had chlamydia.
What was the answer? You don't have to answer.
If I had female chlamydia, if I had
Oh my God.
female, yeah. So they weren't exactly tuned in. I was like, I don't know if this is what people are, they're going to resonate with exactly. So anyhow, yeah,
So I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to put Chris on the spot. I know him personally. This is a picture of his Owwll profile. I think you need a newer picture, Chris. What are you, 12 in that picture?
Is that an AI picture?
I was going to say it's well, that was pre-AI.
There you go.
So it's manually shopped, but
there you go.
Somebody
It's fine.
did work hard on that.
So Chris, like a lot of people that have PhDs, is very modest. He doesn't want you to call him doctor, but Chris is a real underachiever in that you were only able to get your PhD. So let's shift gears a little more and tell us a little more about you personally and your background and the other degrees you have.
Yeah. I have amassed a number of degrees that I don't use. So I have a doctorate, I have 4 masters. I was in academia for quite some time, for a decade. I spent a decade sort of in the ivory tower, if you will. So I was research faculty at Columbia University, and had sort of made it, if you will, right? You're bred when you get your PhD to be a research scientist and sort of try to create new knowledge. And they say, don't pay attention to the fact that, you're working 120 hours a week and not making any money, and all of your friends are buying boats and houses and things like that. So I was able to ignore that for about a decade and then said, what the hell am I doing?
So Chris is a real underachiever, PhD and 4 MBAs, correct?
Masters, yeah. MBA is one
of them. Excuse me, 4 masters. But one of them is an MBA, correct?
An MBA.
Yeah. One PhD, 1 MBA, and 3 other masters. Real underachiever. I know him well enough to get the kid with him.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So Chris, you've been involved with the Tech Hub for about 2 years or so.
Yeah.
For somebody new that's coming into Florida, migrating from other states, what would be the best way to get involved with the South Florida Tech Hub from your point of view? And also, what kind of companies are you looking to network, connect with within the community of technologists?
Join Tech Hub. I mean, without question, right? There's a couple of options. And as a founder, you are going to get inundated with, let me help you. And it's really tough to separate the signal from the noise. Tech Hub is just really phenomenal. In general, Miami is a great place to have a tech company. I think it's the 5th largest tech hub and growing dramatically. And the South Florida Tech Hub really has a good foothold in the community. They have a lot of great companies and sponsors that are a part of it. They put on great events. They work very, very, very hard. And they will, it's sort of right size, if you will. It's not so large that you're just a number and it's like, okay, come in and you get access to our pool and email list and that's it. No, they know you. And this guy has reached out so many times with, we've got this opportunity that we think might be perfect for you. And they usually are. And it's just been, I can't stress it enough. Just join. I think it's $1,000 or whatever it is. That sounds a lot if you're, paying out of pocket for your company. Totally worth it. Right? I agree. If you don't know what you're getting, okay, it's a lot of money, but knowing what you're getting here, it's nothing. Just do it. Don't even.
Thank you. So personal comment. One of the things I like about this job, I am director of membership, is I talk to a lot of current and potential members. So I get to meet a lot of very interesting people like Chris. So thank you for that. It's the part of the show that I hate. We're going to kind of wrap up. Thank you again, Chris, for being on the 25th episode. Congratulations. So why don't we do what I call around the horn? Denis, if you have a final question, any other thoughts, I'll let you go. Then Chris, and then I'll wrap up.
Yeah, it was really insightful to learn all about clinical trials and specifically what you do as far as the middleman. I appreciate your time. You know, it's also insightful for me to learn how you're utilizing the AI to speed up all this custom processes and questionnaires for the trials. I know it's very HIPAA compliant. But thanks for having it. No other parting thoughts, Jeffrey?
Well,
Do you
I'm
have
gonna-
any events coming up.
Well, we do, but Denis, you're too modest. I want you to mention your medical related other company, since I think there may be some synergy.
Yeah, we also run a Curious Digital, which is a digital marketing agency. You know, it was interesting to me to hear because we also developed a HIPAA compliant CRM, but it's specifically for home care agencies. You know, we deal with CMS that you mentioned all the time, but for senior related management, and we do lead generation for home cares. They're looking to recruit caregivers or also get clients. So since it's very HIPAA compliant, we just went through the whole HIPAA compliance certification process. It's very, as you know, it's
A lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. But, you know, that software is called pipelineamp.com. You know, we're still developing, adding new features.
What's the URL of Curious?
Curious, CURIS digital.com and pipelineamp.com.
Thank you.
Thank you for the shout out.
You're welcome. Chris, parting thoughts.
Sure.
Anything you want to mention we didn't mention?
Yeah, the one thing I forgot is kind of neat. So we are putting an application for the NIH and ARPA-H, if you know what that is. It's sort of a new government agency that we'll see how long it lasts in this new administration. But anyhow, we are looking for partners to go in and do just an old-fashioned sort of race, if you will. Partners that are running clinical trials and recruiting for clinical trials. We're going to let them do their thing, and we are going to recruit for the same trials for a year and see if we can improve upon their recruitment rates. We're offering a $250,000 stipend for a partner, in addition to a whole bunch
So
of
what
services.
specific organization are you looking for?
Healthcare organizations need to have 1 million patient records and be ideally having about 1,000 clinical trials running through your sites.
Okay. All you out there in the free world internet or the non-free world, if you're able to watch, and on Owwll, if you have any candidates, reach out to Chris on Owwll. Have his profile up here, as well as LinkedIn. Couple of parting thoughts. I am director of membership. Thank you for the nice comments about Tech Hub. If you're not a member, please reach out to me. I am on the Owwll app. We do have one event coming up I want to mention. It's actually this Thursday for you soccer fans. It's going to be a kickoff, pun intended. It's our 30th year. It's going to be a soccer event. It's open for families, so come mingle and bring your kids. It's going to be at the Beyond Bankcard Field in Davie. So thank you for that. Thank you for watching. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, Steph.
See you guys next week.
And thank you, Jess. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.